Hey guys, Baron here. Pokémon is a game franchise that has existed for over 20 years at this point. In that time, it has seen a transfer from the old Game Boy to the new Nintendo Switch. In that time, we have also seen a lot of new games, some of them marking generations of Pokémon games. According to Bulbapedia, the definition of a Pokémon generation is a grouping of the Pokémon games that separates them based on the Pokémon they include. In each generation, a new set of Pokémon, moves, and abilities that did not exist in the previous generation are released. This includes a core set of games, side games, spin-off games, a new season of the Pokémon anime, and new sets of the trading card game. An example of this is how in Generation 1, Red, Blue, and Yellow were the main games, Stadium is the side game, and both the Pokémon Puzzle, Pinball, and Snap were spin-off games, and how some sets of the card games were Jungle and Fossil. We often have different memories and attachment to these different generations. They mark different periods of our time as a fan of the franchise, and that's what many associate them with. Therefore, today, I am counting down my ranking of the Pokémon generations. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss an upload from me. But with that being said, let's get into the video. Before I get into the ranking, I should mention two things. One, this video will try to be as objective as it can. That means that I will try to look at the games trying to look away from nostalgia and such. Of course it is my opinion at the end of the day, but I will not have the list be too subjective at least. Another thing is that I will be focusing on the main games while looking at the generations. This is because I have not played most of the other games, and I will feel wrong ranking the list on things I am not familiar with. Now, let's get into the list. Speaking of looking at things objectively, the first generation is actually Generation 1. Now before you give me all the hate in the comments, both plot-wise and concept-wise, Generation 1 is terrific. It is after all the generation that invited us into the world of Pokémon. The first generation to give us the games we all have grown to love. And undoubtedly, it introduced a terrific region in Kanto, with so many examples of great Pokémon. The problem I have with Generation 1 though, are the mechanical flaws of the games. This is referring to the actual original Game Boy games. The first point here is how the actual playing mechanics are formed, with psychic types being unthreatened, the bug types having no usage whatsoever, and certain moves like Horn Drill on a Nidoking, where if you put an X accuracy on and use Horn Drill, you basically ran for any opponent with one-hit KOs. The issues were many. Another problem was the fact that the games had glitches. There are so many examples of this, and it definitely lowered the experience for many players. The Generation 1 game, while being terrific, had a lot of problems, and that's why they are here on number 7th place. Now, on number 6th place we have, very fittingly, Generation 6. This is a generation of games I thoroughly enjoyed. Not only did these games take the Pokémon franchise to the 3DS with a new 3D model, allowing for a visually stunning game, it introduced a bunch of great mechanics, such as IV and EV breeding and Pokémon and Me. The games were enjoyable too, with a solid Pokédex, a fun plot, and good characters. My issue with this generation, however, lies with that I didn't enjoy this generation as much as the others. I don't really know why this is. But my theory is that the games felt a bit flat. Story-wise, it felt very linear while being fun, and I felt that there was a lot of potential that could have been reached in this generation. For example, it would have been great seeing a third updated version of Pokémon X and Y, involving Zygarde and some of the other unexplored legendaries. Instead, we ended up with the only generation without a third updated game. I do have to say that Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire was a huge plus to this generation, being possibly my favorite Pokémon games of all time, but it doesn't save Generation 6 from the number 6 spot. Next on the list, we have Generation 3. These games were the first ones I played with Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire. Therefore, this is definitely the most nostalgic to me. Then you might wonder why this generation is only here on number 5 spot. Well, to be honest, I feel like it is because these games feel outdated, more so than any other core games in the franchise. These games were held on the Game Boy Advance, and since Generation 2 was on the Game Boy Color and Generation 4 on the DS, these games is alone in its own console. And I know that you can play it on the DS, but that's not what I'm talking about. Given that, and that is the only games not ever published on the DS systems, it definitely feels old school. Now, this is fine, but compared to other games in the franchise, it doesn't hold up as well. Fire Red and Leaf Green were released as Generation 1 remix in this Generation 2, and while these games certainly are fun, they suffer the same negatives as Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald, still being a bit old school. This generation certainly holds fun games, but it is one that is weak compared to the others coming on this list, and that is why it is on the number 5 spot. A lot of people hate on Generation 5, and I really don't agree. These games were a lot of fun, with a good region and good Pokemon. Not just that, but Black and White and Black 2 and White 2 had some of the most interesting plots I've seen in any games, both challenging the player in dilemmas and giving interesting perspectives of questions we've asked ourselves playing the games. It also has a bunch of interesting locations, good mechanics introducing, for example, hidden abilities, and much more. I can understand the argument of that it was negative not allowing you to catch old Pokemon in Black and White. We were introduced so many new ones, it didn't feel like it mattered. I can also understand to an extent the argument that many of the Pokemon introduced were rip-offs of old Pokemon, and I agree with this, but we were also introduced to original and unique Pokemon. Black 2 and White 2 were also huge improvements on the first games, providing fun post-game content and fixing the problems of not having any old Pokemon. Overall, the Generation 5 games were a lot of fun for me to play, and it's placing it here on the number 4 spot. It was very hard choosing between the 3 remaining. They all are generations I really enjoyed, with great games and great contributions to the franchise. I have, however, chosen to take long-standing bonds to Generation before new and interesting mechanics. So coming up on the 3rd spot now is actually Generation 7. Yes, the newest generation is here. Now, these games changed a lot. Not only were the gyms, which were involved in every generation before, changed to trials, where you'd have to challenge trial captains. We also got a level up forms and C moves, changing the mechanics of the game. Now, this generation is not over yet, but everything we've seen so far I have thoroughly enjoyed. Sun and Moon introduced all these concepts that I mentioned, and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon carried over all these concepts, but also making a harder game, actually introducing a challenge for the player Pokemon has lacked before. Generation 7 is definitely a good generation to be in, and that's why it's here on the 3rd spot. Now, between the 2 remaining, both could easily be considered the best generation. Both of these hold deep memories for me, and I can recollect so much joy playing through all these games, including both the generations. However, one holds less memories for me, which is Generation 2. Like I said, Generation 3 was the first games I played. This meant that I actually only got to play these games when I was older, making them way less nostalgic for me. That being said, they are truly fantastic games. If you didn't know, Game Freak, the creators of Pokemon, actually only planned to make one generation, but extended it with one more before realizing the games were huge successes, and that they simply couldn't stop making them. This essentially meant that everything great in Generation 1 was enhanced in Generation 2. So we got Pokemon from both games available to us, 2 regions to explore, and 2 sets of gyms. This meant that we got more post-game than any game before. All in all, this is what makes Generation 2 fantastic and places it on the 2nd spot. So, what is on the number 1 spot? What is my absolute favorite generation? Well, for those who have done the math, you already know. It is, of course, Generation 4. There are so many reasons why I love Generation 4. It was the first games with Pokemon Pearl where I really dug into a game and spent a lot of time into it. Actually, I have completed the Pokédex as proof of this. It was a game I played alongside friends, battling them and trading with them. It was a game I grew up with. Everyone has a game they play on a playground. Well, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl was that for me. It was a great way to connect with friends, and it was a huge part of my childhood. I can safely say that it is the only game I've spent over 200 hours on. This is also the game where I've enjoyed the story the most. The mechanics were great placing the game on the DS, meaning that it was easier and more comfortable to play, at least for me. Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver were also introduced, which were great enhanced versions of Gold and Silver. All in all, some games are part of our identity. They shape who we are, our interests, and our memories. Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, with Platinum, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver enhancing the experience of previous games, made Generation 4, in my opinion, the best of the best. So, that was my list. It was a bit of a longer video, but it was a lot of fun to make, and I hope you got to know me just a bit better through it. I'm definitely planning to make more lists and top 10s on different subjects. I know this video was a bit more of a podcast type of video with me just talking, but there is a theory coming later next week being a bit more cinematic in essence, so don't worry. If you did enjoy this one though, make sure you drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss an upload from me. But with that being said, I've been Baron, and I will see you in another video.